Hi, welcome to the NAB New York Show studio here in New York City. I'm Claire Plaisted, and today I'm joined by JR Carlucci, Consulting Systems Engineer from Fortinet. Hi, JR, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, great, thanks for joining me. So tell me a little bit about Fortinet.
Sure, Fortinet is a worldwide cybersecurity company, founded in 2000 with our flagship product, the next generation firewall. Since then, we've grown massively to have over 10,000 employees and $4 billion in revenue and a whole suite of security products.
Okay.
And today, we've gotten a lot of interest in zero trust and zero trust network access, and how we can help companies in their journey of discovering that technology.
Okay, great. So we're hearing a lot about zero trust at the moment in the cybersecurity space. Is this a new product and that has hit the market?
So zero trust in and of itself isn't a product or a service per se. It's really an architecture. It's an ideology of least privilege. And what I mean by that is traditional networks might allow everyone, once they're on the network, to access anything. So zero trust says you have to be explicitly granted access to a resource for security purposes. It's not necessarily a new idea. There have been different types of zero trust solutions that companies have been using for many years, but it's become a kind of a hot topic for two reasons. One is the increasing cloud computing platform. Now, you no longer have your campus and then the big bad internet. It's kind of all intertwined. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, all of these remote users, the explosion of remote users, and this opens up the attack surface and makes companies more vulnerable. So zero trust has become more important now than it ever even was before.
Okay, there are numerous vendors talking about ZTA and ZTNA. Are these the same thing?
So it's a lot of acronyms, right? It gets a little confusing. Really, ZTNA is part of ZTA. There are definitions from industry analysts like Gartner or Forrester, but even then, I think people might get confused a little bit. So here's how I would put it. I'll talk a little bit what a typical ZTA might look like in terms of the products and solutions and what ZTNA would typically be. Now, keeping in mind that there's overlap and these aren't hard and fast rules, but so if you think about ZTA, that's zero trust, right? That could go back to you have a campus network, and rather than letting everybody get access to everything, you might segment that network with firewalls or security appliances, so you limit the amount of resources people can get to. On top of that, in the virtual world, you might even micro-segment, where once a virtual machine comes online, it can only access what you explicitly grant. So that's a form of zero trust. There's also network access control solutions that do that, and companies have been using that for a long time on their networks, especially companies who have high security needs, like in the financial industry, for example. But ZTNA, while it says zero trust network access, you're like, well, how is that different? Well, think of ZTNA, typically, it doesn't have to be, but right now it's focused on remote workers.
Okay.
So if you think about, if you're familiar with VPNs, I think most people are, virtual private networks, remote workers would get into their network on a secure channel, so everything's private, but once they're on their network, they're on the network again, right? Everything's now trusted. So ZTNA is now saying, hey, I'll tell you what, we're going to broker your access to a specific application and only allow access to that application for you, and the access to that application might also depend on the device that you're coming from. So and then if anything changes within that session, we'll immediately drop you. So I think of it, I like to change the A in ZTNA to application to remind myself, because it's brokered application-based access. Now, it doesn't have to be for remote workers, but it typically is, and that's where people are focused on it right now. So I also would think of it almost as a VPN 2.0, a more secure VPN. And that's where a lot of the focus is these days. Okay.
And can organizations simply subscribe to the services needed to complete a ZTA screening? Or
I mean, there are as a service offerings for ZTNA, and these vendors, including us and others, can absolutely help you to deploy a ZTNA solution. But here's the thing, there's really no easy button to this. I mean, so think of it this way. Okay, say I put in the technology for ZTNA, and you think, oh, I'm done. Well, that's well and good, but how do you go from a system where everything's open to now I'm only going to allow explicit access to certain applications? You have to identify the users, what applications they're going to get access to.
Right.
And you certainly don't want to limit them and all of a sudden break access and cause problems in your production environment. You also have to say, well, we're going to lock down to specific devices. Which devices? What are you going to do when a device is not compliant? How are you going to remedy that so someone can get onto the network, right? So you have to be careful, and you have to take a gradual approach to this, because it's a great security technology, but it's not something you can just turn on and off, even if the technology itself can be implemented. So it takes some time.
Okay. Yeah. And where are most organizations in their journey in this? So
there's a whole spectrum, as you would imagine, right? So first, if we talk about not so much ZTNA, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the higher the companies that have higher security requirements probably already have segmentation involved. They probably may have a network access control system. They're not just letting anyone plug into their network. They're limiting, and a lot of that's in place. But I would say that's still the minority of companies. Now, as far as ZTNA, that's been going a little faster because of everybody has remote access workers, right? Like that's the way the world works now, right? So you see a lot more people moving toward that, and I would say some people are just starting, some people are well along, but I don't think I've seen many companies that are just completely migrated to ZTNA because of the issues I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So what you have to be really cognizant of is any solution that you look at, you have to be able to kind of migrate slowly and do a dual-based solution. So for example, hey, I have my administrators. They need full access. They can still get in a VPN, but we'll do ZTNA for certain applications for other users, and then eventually we'll get there. And that's what we see folks doing. That's you get some short-term wins and increase your security stance without really putting your business too much at risk.
Okay. Yeah. And how can Fortinet help companies with this?
So obviously I'm here. We have a wide array of solutions, right? We've got traditional, what I'll call ZTA solutions. We have our own network access control system, which is great about that is it's very vendor agnostic, right? Okay. So a great use case for that would be, hey, on my network, I've got printers, I've got all these IoT devices I'm worried about, and I've got all these different vendors. Well, our NAC could get in there, identify the devices, work with the other vendors, and really limit the access for those devices on their network. So if they do get hacked, their I'll say blast radius is mitigated.
Okay.
And then as far as ZTNA goes, of course, we have our whole full ZTNA solution where we can give you a client and broker application access for remote workers, contractors, and of course, we can coexist with a VPN and kind of help you migrate that way. And I think the last thing I would say is we're very experienced with this. We've been around for a long time. Obviously we're a vendor. We have a solution we want to sell, of course, but we're here also to partner with you and help you in your journey, because ultimately that's the best customer vendor relationship that we would like to have.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming into the studio and telling me all about it.
Thank you.